Welcome, friends, to my first session on how to create a junk journal. While we're all at home during this coronavirus, I wanted to share an art project with you that can keep you quite busy for many hours, or in my case, days. A junk journal can be turned into lots of different things: a diary, a place for gratitude, a place to document an event such as travel, sports, or dance, or just a place to play, somewhere that you don't have to worry about what the outcome is. I'm here in my home studio where I've been spending quite a bit of time lately doing some of my own art, taking some online courses, and creating for some upcoming classes for my students. So I have a lot of art supplies at my fingertips. However, I know that you might not. So I'm going to challenge myself to create this next journal with a limited amount of supplies that I hope you'll have around your house too. Before we get into the list of supplies that you'll need, let's take a look at one that I've already created to give you an idea of what yours might look like. So boys and girls, I started with all kinds of different papers that I took out of my recycling bin. So magazines, text paper, all kinds of things like this. The cover on my page, you do need to have a cardstock weight. So if you have cardstock at home, this is like a designer paper cardstock that scrapbookers would use. So it's patterned on both sides, which is lovely to use, but you might not have that. So if you don't, you can use the cover of a magazine, like this Oprah magazine. It's got some weight to it, so that would be strong enough for the cover of your journal. So this one was a 12 by 12 piece of paper, and because I wanted it to be smaller, I actually folded up the bottom edge, which gave me a little pocket both in the front and at the back of my journal. These are some little tags that I'll show you how to create in another video. This one was just a piece of paper from a magazine, and it already had some pictures on it that I quite enjoyed, and I just added some words. So I just cut out some words and I drew around it to make it stand out. But there's a background of the city of Calgary, and I kind of just like that. I suppose if I wanted to, I could still journal. There's some nice little lines going down the page. I could add some more words or text there if I wanted to. On the flip side of this same page was a picture as well that kind of reminded me of going to someplace for a nice Italian dinner. And so I just left it as is, though I wrote the word wine down on this side, and on the flip side of it, I wrote dine, so for a wine and dine night. I had a piece of graph paper, and I obviously have room to fill something else in on here. On the flip side, because I had this music sheet, and you can see I just tore it. There's no need to have anything exact in this journal. I like to tear as opposed to cut, though occasionally I may cut some things off. To decorate this, I just used a Sharpie and some colored pencil crayons. And these little strips of paper from an art project that I had that I probably didn't like or was going to toss, and I just ripped some thin lines of paper out of there and glued them on. On the music sheet here, I just drew some circles with probably a little glass or something, and with pencil crayons just colored them in. So I kind of like that just by itself, and it went along with my quote that I chose to use here. So I think I'll probably just leave that page alone. Though I have some space, if I wanted to, I could still write some words. On the flip side, again, I just used probably that same discarded piece of art in this piece as well, and glued them down so I could still add something to this if I want. This is an envelope. So I have put some washi tape on here. Now you might not all have washi tape, but I'll show you how we can cut some pattern pieces from magazines as well to glue on top of there. And I just glued a piece of that art paper down, added the little treble clef, because again it was beside a music sheet, and wrote a little quote that went around the outside edge. And this is just a brown paper bag that I had that I incorporated in here, and I wrote a quote. I had a bookmark that I thought, oh, that would be perfect. It kind of blended with the colors that are in here in the background. I'm not sure if I did that on purpose or if it just worked out that way. And this was just an extra little piece of that designer paper that I had left over. This is another sheet of that designer paper, which is patterned on both sides. And I created this little envelope. This is just made out of a little magazine. And I'll show you how we can do those later. Hope you can tell under there. But I wanted to mimic what was going on this side. So just with Sharpies, I just did lines and lines of colors that were similar to the same one on this pattern piece of paper. And I taped it down with some washi tape. This, I've got room to do something, and it's watercolor paper. So I wanted to save this for something that I could use watercolors on it, because unfortunately watercolor won't work on some of the shiny news paper that we might use, or the magazine paper. This is a leftover piece of art paper, and I don't like to waste any paint at all, so I use up leftover paint that's in my palette and just use it for backgrounds in my art journals. This one had a lot of black on it, so I had a white gel pen that I just went and did some doodles in the different areas just to lighten it up so it wasn't so dark. And I'm still not sure, I've still got room to do other things on this page, or I might just leave it as is. This was a large doily I had, and I just put it in the middle. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. I might just leave it as is, though I did have a stamp that said Hello Sunshine, and I tucked that in there. These also create little pockets, so I could put some little tags or something in here as well. This was an art piece that one of my students gave me, and I didn't want to lose it, and it kept floating around in my art studio, so I thought I'm going to glue this down. So because I had art, or this was an art page, sorry, on the back here, I painted this, and then I stamped it with a rubber stamp of some butterflies I had. Because this paper was right beside it with the butterflies, they coordinated quite nicely, and I quite like the way that turned out. And it reminded me of Butterfly Kisses, the song, so I wrote that down on here, and I quite am pleased with it. And this one here, I love this paper, and I just did a sketching class, a watercolor sketching class, and created this little cupcake. And I thought, how perfect. I think I will glue this into here. The colors match the background in here, and it would be a lovely little treat to have with my coffee on this page. Again, this is just the flip side of that brown paper bag. This is a pocket that I'll show you in another video how to make, and this was just out of a magazine page. And it's just how you fold it. Luckily, all these colors I didn't add. That's just the way the magazine page was that I tore out. Though this was some of that paper I had left over, I glued it on. And this is a piece of washi tape that I covered up some words there that I didn't want any words showing on the front. And I know this doesn't show up very well. It says good things today. So if you see any words that you might see in magazines, cut them out, keep them, because you might incorporate them into your little journal. This is the other side of that envelope. So I have another place I could pop in a little message or whatever I want in there, something I want to save, and again, some washi tape. On the flip side of this was just a magazine page too that I folded, decorated the edges so that the writing didn't show, and I put some washi tape around the outside edge too and glued it all down. Some more music paper I have to come up with an idea. And this was a library pocket that I just happened to have. I painted on it, stenciled on it, doodled on it, and just glued it, or taped it, I guess, onto this graph paper. And that was the back side of my little piece of magazine article. And here's another pocket that we'll create. So this is just one piece of a torn out magazine page that I folded up, folded the corners back, and painted on top. But this is with acrylic paint, which your watercolors won't work on this. So if you don't have acrylic paint, we can cover this up with just some other textured papers from the magazine to create the same sort of effect. So that is how yours could turn out. So let's take a look at some supplies you'll need. Okay, let's get some of our supplies together that we're going to use today. And I've grabbed a bin that I'm going to put everything in, so I have it all ready to go. If you have some colored Sharpies, those would be great to use, or any kind of colored markers. some permanent Sharpie black pens. I have a super fine tip and a fine tip. I have watercolors, pencil crayons, pencil and eraser, a glue stick, some masking tape, a pair of scissors, a ruler, and some acrylic paints if you have them. And I'm going to use the 3 primary colors, so I have red, blue, and yellow. Any red, blue, and yellow would work. We can mix these to create other colors, as well as some white and some black. And to put our book together, if you've got some twine, some ribbon, some string, or these little metal rings, they would be great for putting our journal together. So I'm going to set this aside, and then I'm going to gather up my papers. So I've gone through my paper recycling and pulled out some things that I think might be useful in my journal. Here's a little A&W flyer, an envelope, and just a vast assortment of some different kinds of junk mail. This was in my art binge pile. Here's a pizza flyer. And here I've torn out a page from an old book. Make sure it's an old book or one that's fallen apart at home and that you have permission to use. And then I have this piece of paper that I'm going to use for my cover. It was also in my art bundle. Then what you want to do is you want to fold all these papers in half. So I folded this one in half, take my book page, fold it in half, make a nice crease. This one already has a fold in it, but it's longer than my cover that I'm using. So I'm going to fold it up, and then these will be little pockets that I can use. This is just a piece of art paper, just going to fold that in half. This is a Staples flyer, and again, I'm going to make a little fold in it to make some more little pockets. And fold this one in half this direction. My envelope, and my little A&W copy thing. So I've got a variety of sizes, which is what you want in your journal. And then I need to kind of put them together, but first I need to hole punch them. So what I'm going to do is, I've already got my envelope hole punched because I thought it was my smallest item, but it's not. I have this one too. So I want to make sure that I can hole punch this so that it's punched in 2 places. So I'm going to line it inside my envelope so that I can see it. And I'm going to take my hole punch, which you'll also need, and I'm going to use this as my guide and punch my holes. Perfect. And then I want to do that on every flyer that I've used, or any piece of paper. So anything you might have at home. You might have old artwork that you are not attached to, that you're not thrilled with, that it could go in here. Or any kind of copy paper, magazine papers, whatever you can find. Some of these are a little harder to punch. I want to make sure that's right tight and lined up with my other hole. Okay. And none of these have to be perfectly centered. I might want to even offset, that's fine too. Oops. And my last page. So you want about 6 or 7 sheets of paper, 6, even up to 8. And there we go. Now I need to put this together in a format, and I like to kind of stagger the heights so that they're not all the same. switch this up and put a thinner one in there. Book page. Maybe I'll change that up, put this in the middle. So once I have them all together, I'm going to use my pencil. I'm just going to line up the holes that I've punched. And then I'm going to grab a piece of string. I'm going to use this twine here that I have, and I'm going to fold it over just so that I'm not using the raw edge because it will fray. So now that I've got these all lined up, I'm going to push this through, make sure it goes through all of them. So you might have to open it up a bit. Make sure that I'm catching each page. Oops. And go through the other side. Once we get this one hole all lined up, the next one should be easier to line up. Okay, I'm just going to grab a hold of this string in the front, pull this all the way through, and that should help line up my other side, but I'm not going to tie it just yet. I'll just pull that through and do the same on the bottom one. It did kind of shift a bit on me. So this will be your step one. Gather all your supplies, gather your pages, put it together, and then we will meet up in the next video as to how we're going to decorate. Okay, I'm all the way through there, so I'm going to grab the one in the front so I don't pull it all the way out. Okay, now I'm ready to tie it. So I'm just going to tie a bow because this might be something I want to add to, or maybe take some pages out. So I'm just going to tie a nice loose bow here. I want to make sure that I leave some space when I'm tying it here so that we can open it up flat when we're working on our pages. So leave a little bit space, don't tie it too tight. I'm sure that I could get my finger through one of those loops, so that will give you an indication of how much space you should leave, so I can get my finger under there. So that when I open this up, everything's going to lay flat when I want to work on it. Okay, so that is the basics to getting our junk journal together. And I can see this one is poking out, so I'm just going to tear it, however it is, and this side too. If you want to use a ruler to get straighter, you can do that, but I kind of like some of these jagged edges. Now everything is contained, and we're ready to go to the next step. So from my home to yours, stay loving and kind, and we'll see you in the next video.